Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Now call the regular council meeting of July 12th, 2022 to order. First item, 2.1, the meeting is open to statements for no more than 5 members of the public of no more than 2 minutes in length each. Thank you. Come forward.
Is there? Oh, this is gorgeous.
So I apologize, this is my first council meeting here. Is this the correct place to stand?
Perfect.
Okay, glad you're here.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ruthie. Good point. Mayor, council members, and fellow guests, my name is Farmer, and I'm the Heritage Manager at the Lillooet District Historical Society, and this is Jens. Might have seen us out, but I apologize, he's still in training, he might get up. I brought with me today this box. I was hoping I could get a little bit closer to you, but I suppose this is partially COVID related. And this is a box that I found in our collection right around this time I started working in the museum. And it's something that many museologists, myself included, will call a key object. This particular key is part of Lillooet's Chinese history. When I found this box, I knew that Lillooet had many Chinese miners in its past, but not a lot else. So to add to our limited historical display on Chinese history, I dusted it off and put it in the gallery. I also took that time to modernize the rest of the Chinese display and a case area. And then some magic happened. The very next day, 2 international students came into our museum on their holidays from school. They were traveling around. One went to school in Toronto, one went to school in Vancouver, and I guess they were sisters. I'm not really sure. But what was incredible was they saw this box and they got super excited because they could read it. I'm not sure how well you can see from where you are, but just up here, there's some characters. And these first 2 characters translate to Hong Kong, which was their home city. It didn't take us long to discover that Hong Kong Pan Yu Tai Lung Ki Tea House is a tea house from Hong Kong, obviously, but also amazingly still exists today. So with their help, I was able to write this interpretation, which is just a very short bit of interpretation that reads, this bronze tea box came from Hong Kong and was likely sold in Lillooet's Chinatown before it was destroyed by fire. Above the tiger, reading from left to right, it says Hong Kong Pan Yu Tai Lung Ki, which is a tea house but still exists today, ending with an exclamation mark. Because it's exciting. And since then, I focused on finding other key objects and have discovered transformative information about our World War I bayonets, our 10,000-year-old microblades, our geological collections, and much more. Yes, buddy, come on. Please late. This has led to the dismantling of 2 of our diorama spaces. Dioramas used to be a very popular way of displaying museological collections because they're interesting. But by opening up, and the ones in the Lillooet Museum were clearly designed with love. But by opening up these dioramas into gallery spaces, it transforms the area into more floor space where we can tell specific stories about our collections. One of our 2 is currently set to telling the story of Statlium basketry in the area. And the other one is still in the works, but it's on the household and luxury in Lillooet. I have plans for the future of dioramas as well, which include, but are not limited to, one specifically for fine arts, such as our handmade rugs, our beautiful photography, our many pictures of churches that we have. Another to bring Mom Murray up in the basement, which is currently inaccessible. And another space for rotating displays for locals and visitors alike. This way we can have our shore history alongside something new and changing so that visitors get here and they learn the history of the town, but there's also still something available for locals to learn every time they come, such as climate change or can-can dancers or any one of thousands of things. We're also working with other societies and stakeholders to create stewardship for heritage sites in and around Lillooet. My current focus has to be on the museum's collection, but I'm very willing, ready, and able to work with anyone, be they individual stakeholders, nations, school children, or business owners, to preserve their own history through our archives, collections, or other methods that work best for their needs. With the support of the district our history can shine. I'd like to ask now if anyone has any questions.
Normally, we don't have questions on these things, but for purposes of clarification, by all means, ask for that. Yes, Councillor Reid.
I don't have a question. I just think that is an amazing presentation. It was just
Yeah.
gave in 2 minutes.
Thank you. It took a lot of work cutting it down.
I'll bet it did. And you've actually inspired me to possibly drop by the museum again because I always found it so dirty and dark and whatever.
Well, it's still
And I
a bit
wanted-
dark. We're working on the lighting.
I wanted to applaud when you said you were going to bring Mom Murray up from the base. I just wanted
That's
to.
so much that people can't see and learn about her. She's such an interesting character.
Right.
She's downstairs and we can't let people downstairs.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Farmer.
Thank you for
Much
having me.
appreciated.
Good job.
I might leave early, depends on how well Ganto does. He's still in training, like I said.
Then stage fright,
Well done.
right?
Okay, is there anyone else?
We do have one online. Mr. Bodendorfer, if you would like to turn on your camera and your microphone, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Unfortunately, my camera does not seem to work, so I might just have to talk here. But you can hear me just fine?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, my name is Johannes Bodendorfer. I'm calling from a beautiful Golden, BC, which I just learned is in a different time zone with the Lillooet Chamber of Commerce. And I just wanted to make some notes just before we get this meeting started today about some of the development applications that we have seen come in over the last couple of months, and just talk a little bit about how it is quite exciting to see increased development in town, both residential and commercial, and how I think as a community we should really be supporting those developments and just making sure that we do everything we can to support businesses and individuals in achieving a better Lillooet. I know some of the decisions that today and over the coming months we're going to be making, or you all are going to be making, are going to be difficult. But it is important to remember that for a business owner, decisions that you make cost thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars. And that's not nothing. In your own revitalization project, I think you have 2 paragraphs explaining how expensive construction is at the moment. So I think it's important to just remember that when we discuss important issues and important development applications, we should ask ourselves the questions: how can we support people? How can we support them achieving the goals that they set for themselves? Especially if some of them make an effort, especially if we can see the work put in by some of our businesses and by some of our individuals. And that, that effort can come in many ways. It can be plans, it can be partial paving, it can be landscaping. I think there's a lot of ways that we can work with our community members, our businesses, on working on the applications. And so I just wanted to make that note as we go through this meeting, and as all of you consider some of the applications and hear some of the applicants on their hopes and dreams. And just remember that this stuff is not easy. And so any support that we can offer, I think, is important. And with that, any clarifying questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johannes. We hear you. Anyone else for public input? No, I see none. Are there any late additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're going to be having a discussion about the East Little Rec Society and a zoning use that the council would like to discuss. Is item 18.1.
It's 18.1. Any further additions or deletions? Okay, council, need someone to move that the July 12th, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended. Call the question on the favor. Was moved by Councillor Awful and second by Councillor Leach. We'll move on to delegations. We have 3 delegations. First one is Lillooet Agricultural Food Society and SLRD Electoral Area B Director.
Be acceptable to move back a little bit so we can sort of see the slides that we have to go over. A little bit. Anyway,
Yes.
I. Sorry, I always sit in your. I don't think so. You can hear us, right?
Yeah.
Is this acceptable? Emily? Dana? I'm Lydia Birch Jones, the Area B Director, and Emily Jones, Executive Director, Lillooet Agricultural Foods, and most of you will know Sarah Petznick, the previous Executive Director of Lillooet Agricultural Foods. And we have 8 slides to show you, and we just wanted to talk about the agriculture sector in Lillooet, BC, surrounded, of course, by area, glorious Area B. So,
So why support local agriculture? Agriculture provides a means for positive growth in our community while supporting sustainable economic change. And Lillooet has historically produced much more food than is currently grown in the region. It is the highest and best use for local land development. Lillooet has much more arable land than farmers farming. Only about 10% of the ALR in the region is being cultivated, and agriculture is an opportunity to grow the market and employ people. It's a great way to move the economy forward and mitigate climate change risks. And our communities can't afford to continue neglecting the opportunities provided by agriculture, and establishing a service will provide sustainable funding that will in turn translate into wellness for the community. And this will create a more robust and resilient food system that is resistant to climate change. So the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society, also known as LAFS, the society was formed to implement the agricultural plan and advance the agricultural economic development in the Lillooet area. The SLRT board adopted the agricultural plan on October 1st, 2014. And LAF's official mandate is to enhance the agricultural viability of the Lillooet region, to promote awareness, education, and research related to agriculture, enterprise, sustainability, and food security, to support and connect local food and agriculture enterprises, and to build community support for our local food system and unique food culture.
Just to interrupt, when the agricultural plan was done, Mickey McRae was the Area B Director. And when Mickey retired and just went around telling everyone he's retiring and Vivian Birch Jones is taking over, and there wasn't even an election and there was a claim, he said, pay attention to agriculture. It's very important.
I would also like to add that that plan is award-winning and well-known around properties for being. And just an important aspect is LAFS also provides an essential communication link between the producers and throughout the region through education and resource creation.
and how the service will support labs. So current funding for staff exists depending on discretionary grant funding, subject to the varying priorities of elected officials and the availability of funds. Therefore, it is susceptible to change. And this service would create more sustainability and stability for the organization, allowing for longer term planning. And this service would allow LAST to access more grant funding. So LAST has been able to access grants and core funding through PILT as leverage. And this year, LAST has 3 times the operational budget of previous years. So this year, our operational budget is over 300,000 versus 79,000 in 2019 and 69,000 in 2018. LRIS, a little bit Regional Invasive Species Society, is an excellent example of how a society can grow and the meaningful change that can be made when you have a permanent paid executive director. LRIS has an impressive capacity for collecting data. Their GIS setup is really impressive. And through the service establishment, LAS would be able to support greater data collection. And without a full-time paid ED, there isn't the capacity to hold that level of data. And this contextualizes organizational capacity and strengthens future grant applications. So more stable core funding gives longevity to the society and its capacity to support the community, and it keeps funding local. So federal funds are making their way to agriculture through the province, but it lacks the channels to effectively return to the local people. So this agreement, or sorry, service enables this to happen. And with the rising gas prices, we need to locally support systems more so than ever.
I was just gonna say, because I was thinking about that here, coming here, that the amount of investment that we made, it's like 30,000 for the year from the PILT funding, but that turned into 300,000 in through the leverage and some of the other grants they were able to get. But you have to have that core base starting point to access those bigger dollars, and every single one of those dollars is coming right back here. Those dollars aren't going anywhere here. Sorry, Jerry.
So how the service will support the community. So it supports various economic drivers. LAST provides opportunities for employment, education, skills development, and community outreach. The service would support local tourism. Recent agro-tourism study emphasizes there's a lot of support for agricultural tourism, but we need paid staff to coordinate and take the work off the farmers so that they can be on the farms. And LAST has hosted farm tours in the past, and they were really positively received.
People are fussy with some small one.
So this service is also really significant to climate change mitigation and disaster response. So it's a relatively small tax to pay to create more autonomy in the food system. So that when the highways close, as we've seen, or when we need to respond to an emergency, we are not having to rely on this import model, as the import model for food has failed us, and we need to have a more diversified and resilient strategy. Food security and food independence. This is a preventative approach to community health. So you either pay the farmer or you pay the doctor. And again, it's just really significant to climate change response. So this is the council resolution from 2014. So the District of Lillooet made the commitment to endorse the implementation of the agricultural plan and has been supported by Area B since. And this is the excerpt of the motion that was carried on October 20th, 2014.
These are some sections from the more recent official community plan to do with agriculture. I'm sure you guys, that's fairly recent. You're probably pretty familiar with that.
So we're asking for confirmation today for a continued commitment to the agricultural plan and its implementation through LAPS. And also the implementation of the official community plans that are agriculturally focused. And I would like to open to questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Hopple.
Okay, thank you. So what you're asking for, so in 2014, I was part of that council then, and we did, probably support it. We would, but I don't think that we promised any money towards, support can come in many forms, right? So, and I just know that our finances at that time, I would not promised money to anybody, so. I have to ask you, so you're asking for what form of support from us?
Today, it's more just, we want to sort of inform, as you guys know, I'm certainly working on a service establishment through the SLRD, and I started that in my very first year, and here we are in the fourth year, actually having some movement at the regional level. And I consider Lillooet to be part of Area B. We would like to have positive support from Lillooet on this, and we'll bring it back from the SLRD for a more specific kind of ask or suggestion. But I thought we need to inform you better. Like when I did the little stint working for Lillooet Agriculture and Food 5 years ago, before I was on Area B, I was astonished at the amount of good produce and good farmers and amazing work going on here. And I don't know, we want you to really appreciate that agriculture sector as well. From my point of view in B, it's the future for Area B, it's our agriculture sector. So but it needs support.
Right,
We're losing
And
airport gardens right now.
right, and I totally support it, and making everybody support it is, not, but whatever, I support it. But often, so that leads me, when I go to a store in Kamloops, they'll say, hey, do you want to donate $1 for junk rope for heart? Or you go to the liquor store here and they're like, do you want to donate $1 for grad? Why don't we do something like that? Because that would really generate how much support you have.
Well, that's the most fun. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that it's not necessarily as steady, it's not necessarily as supportive to the role of the executive director. And I think that the only reason LAPS has been able to implement all of the projects and all the things we were able to do is because I had a steady job. And so if we want people to move to our community, we need to be creating those jobs that young people are interested in and are going to stay in because there's some future to it. And for me, there was a lot of growth and a lot of learning. It certainly wasn't a huge paycheck, and it still won't be with what we're asking, but it's enough that you can exist within the community and be doing really good work. And without that consistency, for me, there's no way I would have stayed on, and I would have applied for those grants, and that grant got support of $1 million to build infrastructure. And so if we're not committing in a way that is going to be consistent and it's something that we can put out on the internet and ask people to come to our community. I mean, Emily has come to our community to work this job now. And I think if we're just asking for donations here and there, and we're like, okay, we'll pay you, 15 grand this year, like no one's going to come here and do the job. And no further funding will be received from the federal and provincial governments when those big grants go out to assist with infrastructure and new projects and new technology. So.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention in my introduction, so we also have Melanie Helmer here on the line. Hello, Melanie.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, great presentation, Vivian, much better than last time.
Emily. Sarah. I said the last time, thank you, I'll take that.
You were listening. And Emily is definitely getting more confident, and it shows. I think it's wonderful to see the involvement of the younger generation in things that are so important to Lillooet and surrounding areas, including Area B. I'm going to correct Councillor Hoffel a little bit there. I think when that resolution was made, it was the council going out. It wasn't us coming in. And only because I saw the names Parker and Anderson on there and I'm like, no. we
Oh,
weren't part of
okay.
that. But I fully support you. I wanted to know if, and possibly this, I know we do it in the various farms or the wineries or whichever, the food to table. Do we do that in our local restaurants? Like, do we supply the foods in our local restaurants or are they all down at Bio buying food to themselves?
I can certainly answer that, because I know that, for example, Fort Barron's, it sources as much as they can and have regular deliveries from our local guys. I know the bakery also, you know, you'll see the sausage roll, local will also, and others, I don't know, may try or may not be quite as suited for some of the other restaurants, but those farmers that have certification for good agricultural practices, GAP it's called, can market. So you'll see, for example, Indian's Green Dirt Farms,
Yeah.
that beautiful spinach. Oh my. And when I tried to talk this up with Ed Nichols at the country store, I said, I've been selling local for 40 years. That's okay.
He does sell a lot.
Yeah. So the answer is in a limited way, and I think we could do so much more. And of course, the hub's all about that too.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we are working on that. We have held the GAP workshop. It's something that's way higher up than any legislation that's at our level. That's Canada-wide legislation that's like stopping our farmers from selling to Milo because they used to buy local farmers' goods. And that is something we're working on, writing letters, hosting workshops, trying to help farmers get through that and move up to the next level.
That's terrific information. Thank you. I know it came up at, I think, our very first NETIC meeting when Buzzy and I were there and got a very positive feedback on it. And I think the most dangerous phrase in the English language is that's the way it always was. And I know that gets used a lot in small rural towns and yeah, it's offensive to me because we need to look at the future, not the way it always was. What else did I have to say? Those T-shirts are awesome. Are you selling those for a fundraiser? And where do we find them? Terrific. Good presentation later.
Councillor Hoffel.
One last question. Do we have a co-op between the farmers? Is there one here?
No, and that is something that we were working on with the cold storage facility and the funding that we received for that.
Okay,
My impression, when it comes to co-ops, we've hosted some co-op workshops and I've spoken to several experts on the subject within British Columbia. They're quite difficult to pull off, and the number one reason that I believe we don't have one in Lillooet, and I haven't pushed for it throughout my time with LAFS, is that farmers are already way too busy. Our farmers are driving to Vancouver twice a week to deliver the vegetables because they need to make 3 or 4 markets a week, and that's where they get the most money. And so the idea with the cold storage was that we would try and get people to start coming together and build a co-op from sort of the other direction, because it's a bit of a chicken and an egg problem. Because right now farmers don't have enough time or money to invest in a co-op. But if we figure out ways to give them more time and money within Lillooet, then I'm hoping that we'll be able to have the volume.
oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. SLRD Area B and well
You
done.
are most welcome. Thank you for your trust. Thank you very much.
Okay, move to the next delegation, Dawson Road Maintenance, summer update.
Thank you, Mayor Bussey, Council. So you may remember I'm Dave Rhodes, Quality Manager. The first thing I'd like to do is say thank you. It's nice to have this back in person again and to see you all face to face. I'd like to introduce Chris Roloff. Chris Roloff is our new operations manager. He's been in that seat for a year and a half. Ballpark. And we'll be leaving his contact there. Chris, go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you really are.
Yeah, so Chris Rutloff, I've been with Dawson for 18 years, mostly in the 100 Mile Bridge Lake area, but just recently in the last year and a half, kind of expanded down this way. It's quite the rugged area and it's been quite an eye opener here, especially the last winter there with with the turmoil going on 99 South there, but, no, I'm pleased to be down here and, I hope we can just maintain the relationship that we have right now and just keep it open and honest and, yeah, I'm just, pleased to be here. I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Well, welcome, Chris. We are told that you're the guy who's gonna come in and fix Highway 40. So.
I'm the guy. No, and we do work closely with Ministry of Transportation. Of course, Highway 40 is one of those big roads that, the province doesn't really see it, right? It's back in the woods, it's on the side of a mountain and, we're hoping to give it some visibility for sure and, get some work done on it, as well as the surrounding area, so. Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Good, thanks, Chris. I have a couple more items I want to touch on and I'll leave the list over the table there. But first of all, I don't know if you're aware, but our Lillooet and Goldbridge crew this year, I received the Project of the Year award from the Dawson Group. That's our organization nationally of, I don't know, close to 1,000 employees for the work that they did on mudslides on the avalanches this year. So it's a really good company recognition. Our president and CEO came out, HR came out, did a presentation and they were all wearing some nice jackets and stuff like that. So that was one thing that, if you see one of our crew members, let's thank them. Job well done. It's really something. Next, out of that Highway 99 closure, Mary, you and I had some conversations back and forth through the winter about that, and you've probably seen some of my emails that I sent out about that. One of the good takeaways from that is that we have, Chris and I are part of a meeting. Out of that formed a group, the Highway 99 Management Group. So that includes Ministry of Transportation, both here and over on the coast. It includes the CBSC, it includes 3 different divisions of the RCMP. It includes First Nations groups and the maintenance contractors for both areas. We meet on a monthly basis in the summer and we increase that as needed, kind of like as an emergency, internal emergency response type of thing. But it's been very, very beneficial. It's really open communications with RCMP as an example, which is quite a closed knit communications strategy that they have. But they began this process, actually the Ministry of Transportation began it, but they expanded on it, jumped into it. It's been very great. So that's probably one of the biggest good things that came out of that. There was a lot of good, but that was probably one of the biggest good things simply because we have that avenue of communication where we can reach deeper into different organizations to discuss issues and how to resolve them. Very beneficial. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was some of our summer activities. You know, you've probably seen the Great All's done tremendous amount of ditching up and down Road 40. We've had some rock strikes. Internally in our organization, we've developed a platform that will allow the worker in the field to report rocks directly to Ministry of Transportation. So if there's a big rock fall on the road or something like that, they put it into their tablet, they hit cell phone range or back into the yard for Wi-Fi, and that gets emailed directly to Ministry of Transportation. So that's been really helpful for getting the rockfall people understanding and seeing. They can actually attach pictures to the reports now. Before it was always a piece of paper like this that got faxed into them. Now they're getting an actual document that's emailed to them with pictures of the site and all that stuff. So very location specific and very good for them. That's one of the things that's kind of come about this summer. Most of our grading is, on schedule. We are doing base stabilization throughout the area. If you're receiving questions about base stabilization, I should mention that is one of the supply issues that we're having all across BC. It's not just Lillooet or even Dawson Road. I mean, it's all across BC. There's a bit of a supply issue with the calcium chloride that we use for base stabilization, dust control. Outside of that, we've done some patching. You probably saw the rock fall up on 99 South that was, this spring, one of the events that happened, that's been patched up. Where the pickup and the trailer burned there, we ground that up and got that repaved. And there's some ongoing things like that. There is unfortunately no planned paving in downtown Lillooet this year. That's all I have to say. Is there any questions?
Thank you, David. Councillor Weed.
Bear with me for a minute because my mind is going elsewhere. Welcome, Chris. You seem like a heavy hitter, so I'm wondering if you will be included in our MODI meetings that are done quarterly.
If David invites me, you bet.
Because I really think that they need to hear that loud and clear.
Yeah.
I don't know how much weight, Dawson Road maintenance has as far as getting, yeah, I know, I just said that he's gonna get something.
I didn't say it out loud and I hit it from the camera.
I get it. I just think, you know, it needs to be addressed about the scaling or putting that chain link or whatever it is up because of every time there's rain, wind, whatever, it's everywhere. Like you go to Kamloops, you're not sure if you're going to be moving rocks to get back or if the road's going to be closed, or you go to Goldbridge, or it goes on and on and on. And so, yeah, the more heavy hitters we have on those MODI meetings, the better.
No, and I agree, and that is something that we face regularly, you know. The challenge there is that those types of decisions have to be based on numbers, right? It's all about risk. And so they look at the amount of risk on that road and they say, okay, so there's 200 vehicles a day. There's 150 rock falls a year, there's X number of vehicle strikes per year, because we record all that. When there's a vehicle strike, right, we record all of that and we get all that information. And they have literally decades of data about this stuff. So we can make our suggestion, but as a maintenance contractor, we have really little influence out of it. So we can't even ask for paving and get it when we want it. You know, it's something, the scope of that's like probably the cost of Highway 8. You know, in terms of mitigating that risk. So that is part of the challenge, is that we support that, we push for that, because it's a benefit to everybody, but that's really beyond our.
I have a follow-up question though.
Okay.
On the paving of Main Street. No, not derogatory, I promise, because we're having our own issues with getting paving done within the district under public works and whatever because of costs and suppliers and this, that, and the other. Is there some way to collaborate? So that when the paving in Main Street is being done, maybe we could be paving Russell Lane or this road or that road and get some kind of a money saver deal going, because they're going to do X number of roads instead of one.
Yeah, and that's something that really needs to be tied with, you know, whatever the district can put together, whatever Ministry of Transportation has together. When you look at the main roads here, most of them have had work recently, right? There's one or two roads, main roads, that ministry is responsible for that they could have more investment for sure. That is an option. And then organizationally, you know, Chris can go, okay, so if ministry is saying we're gonna do this in 2 years, maybe, you know, that he can, but because our plans are, you know, our plan for this year from now till next June was finalized in April, you know, and the year after that is already in a rough draft form, and all of that money for that year is already spent. Now, we can say, well, we're not doing that, we can do this, but that is the process. It's kind of a long-term goal. But if we can all get together, you know, the cost of mobilizing a plant to Chenal Fit is something like at least $100,000, you know, just to get the plant there. I forgot picking the other plant, you know, make the crush, make the materials. Yep.
I think with good communication though, between all the organizations, I think if there is a plan to do some paving down here, we can then start that conversation for sure.
Thank you.
And it's been successful in other areas. It's a good approach.
I think it's an important factor.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good.
David.
Thank you.
Good update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and welcome.
Sure, we go up there.
We'll move to item 4.3, delegation BC Hydro biennial update on Bridge River Capital Plan.
Thanks very much for having us. Good evening. My name is Whitney Dean. So I'm the new community relations stakeholder engagement advisor for Sea to Sky and Bridge River area. So with us today, we do have Sabrina LaCicero. So she is moved into management. So she's still here supporting and assisting, but I can definitely help you with any questions. And then for today, we wanted to definitely bring you an update from John Wu, project manager for the Seaton Unit Replacement project. And so he's here. He'll take you through a refresher on the project And then he will go through the updates, which is the most important part. So I'll hand it over to John.
Okay. It's a different setup than I was here last night, but, hopefully, oh, that'd be perfect, thank you. I'll just scroll up again. Select the right, probably the right. Okay. A lot easier. Just wait and add the, let's go. Thank you very much for having me here again. Last time I think we were here was, remember. Again, this is the overview of the Bridge River system with, I guess, down in the Reservoir, Carpenter Lake, and Seton Lake down at the bottom, Seton Powerhouse at the far bottom. The Seton unit replacement was sort of acknowledged because the unit is nearing the end of life. Generator of 1956, slightly older than I am, but that's where it is. Turbine was placed in 1977, so we're here to project here to replace the whole generator turbine situation. Replacement is necessary because we want to continue in it safely and operating reliably. Why is this project important? Because the Seton unit, the generating station, is the most downstream generating facility from Bridge River 1 and 2. And you almost think it could be a choke point for our system itself. So it provides operational flexibility, water management, controls flows for the Seton rivers and lower Bridge rivers, and maintains electrical power into our grid. Again, this is a high level. I've seen it before. And Seton Canal for 4 kilometers down to our radio gates, down to 10 stops, right. It's above the Shire Road to the powerhouse. This generating unit, this is a dismantled photo of the generating unit that's done in 1956. Why do we need a bypass? Well, it's going to take 12 to 14 months to replace the generating unit. So all the flows have to go down this Seton River, and it's diverting flows down the Seton River creates an issue all by itself. It creates high flows, environmental impacts, impacts to fish, smolts, and the risk of erosion to the banks itself. So we're looking for a bypass that includes, as a part of the project, and it's about 0.6 of a kilometer in red, and it comes just upstream of the forebay, and it will run sideways down the slope down into the Fraser River. Part of our process, we have a mechanism that we use to evaluate our processes. So it's structured decision making modeling, and we take and we evaluate the projects of the bypass and the replacement based on safety, environment, costs, social economic stakeholders, etc. These are not in any order, but this is what we do when we evaluate the project itself. Current activities, this is where we are today. We're in the feasibility design stage of the project life cycle. This structure photo is the canal inside the forebay. It's dewatered completely, and we're coring into the canal to identify the condition of the canal plus the rock properties behind it. The stage, we're expecting it to be completed about 6 to 8 months. Right now, when we did the coring, we're actually evaluating the rock characteristics of what we're going to be finding. And there's a possibility that this bypass could be a underground rock tunnel, subsequently bypassing the hard sites that have potentially identified in the area. We're also at this juncture in the project life cycle, we're confirming the equipment health of the generating unit, confirming. This other, this photo here on the inset is basically adjacent to our penstock and powerhouse. We did that last summer just past after the heat dome. And we were coring about 10 meters down into the ground. From that, We're currently doing flow modeling for the river reservoirs. We're doing arc site overview, archaeological arc site investigations, environmental overviews, fish passion studies, and cultural heritage studies, is what we're doing right now as part of the project in our phase. Project timeline, I guess the one that we're currently working to confirm on the alternative right now, but we are. By spring of next year, we hope to confirm that the alternative that we're going to proceeding. In fall 2023, we're anticipating our target is to start our CBC application with the BC Utilities Commission. And the earliest construction that we could take is late 2025, because from our construction of the bypass itself. The unit will not, the generating unit will not be dismantled because flows have to continue to go through the unit itself, as opposed to the river. And we will not decommission or take apart the unit until the bypass is completed. So there's no disruption to the river itself, Sea River. As safety, as for every BC Hydro project that we undertake, we have a very robust project management plan, includes all aspects of safety, emergency response, travel, working alone procedures, evacuation, wildfire responses, which is kind of in limelight now, and along with flood responses. And of course, the COVID-19 mandates that we're sort of keeping on this last year. Telling our contractors safe. Economic opportunities for as a general generator turbine replacement project. These are the sort of skills that we're looking for, that the manufacturer of the unit itself would be looking for. We're looking for binder electricians, millwrights, concrete finishers, construction management staff, qualified environmental professionals, flaggers. This is for a generator replacement, but for a bypass, would have some similarities, some of these positions here, but also there'll be a little bit more emphasis on heavy equipment operators, safety watchers for the civil works. Plus, depending on the aspect of how we tunnel, whether it's a drill and blast, or they call it a three-headed monster. It's a grinding machine, which this is described to me. It's a giant equipment, and it grinds rock in a circular form, and they would pull the rock up. And we would, those are the specialty sort of operators. Economic opportunities, as I mentioned in previous meetings I've had here, we're still early in our project life cycle. We haven't formally identified the actual opportunities available, but we will also, when we get there, we'll be relying on our contractors and manufacturers to sort of identify what type of skill sets will be required. And as we know, we will provide updates. Workforce, we're looking at, as previously shown, 2026, 27, for the bypass, there's approximately 40 temporary workers for the bypass itself. A year later, we would have another, drop down to about 30 temporary workers for the generating unit replacement. Accommodation, of course, this is a really interesting topic, a really topic of discussion. Accommodations in the threat is a priority wherever possible. This includes local hotels, local private homes. We will be engaging our contractor on the planning activities as we move forward. I just wanted to let the student know that we have engaged a contractor on our accommodation and almost, I call it transportation accessibility study for the Rich River system. And what it encompasses that this contractor will assess accommodation accessibilities from Lillooet all the way to Gold Ridge. We want a plan, we want a transportation plan, we don't need an accommodation plan for the bridge system. As I mentioned, we just sort of took them on. I don't have any of the particulars with regards to the timing aspect, but what will happen is that these contractors that we hired, consultants, will be making their way from Lillooet all the way to Goldbridge, meeting with local municipalities and getting feedback and listening to you on the accommodation aspect of it. Perhaps some maybe traffic issues from Lillooet, Shalap area, all the way to Goldbridge. And then they'll formulate a report for us and it will be forwarded to all parties. They'll be also talking with the local First Nations, the SLRD, and representatives from MOTI. So that's our plan for the next little while. Consultation and engagement. You want to talk?
Well, and we'll just continue. I know Sabrina's done a lot for you guys, but we'll be doing the Bridge Virgo newsletter, so that'll be coming out this summer very shortly. We'll be here for council meetings, here in person and virtually as well when needed. And then also open houses when we have to with that. And then also, I know that I'm new, but I know Kevin and James have my contact information. And projects at bchydro.com also gets to me as well too, if you have questions.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, thank you, Whitney. Any questions from council? Oh. Done. Thank you for coming. Thank you for briefing us. And that three-headed monster, John, is called a tunnel bore.
Okay, there you go. I knew there was a technical word for it.
Okay, folks, we'll move on to item 5.1. Public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw 2022-013, 91 Brown Road. I will now call the public hearing of July 12, 2022 to order. Bear with me here. I'm required to read this specifically word by word according to the Local Government Act. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to section 464 of the Local Government Act to consider proposed District of Lillooet bylaw number 2022-013. Proposed bylaws and related information, including written comments received to date, if any, is available as part of the agenda package for review. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. However, I ask that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. Those wishing to speak at this public hearing commence the remarks by stating their name, and that written comments be submitted to the staff table before closure of this public hearing. I would like to remind everyone present that those in attendance who choose to speak should be free to do so without comment, support, or derision from the gallery. The purpose of a public hearing is for council to hear everyone's opinion on the subject at hand to help in their decision-making process. To that end, I ask that members of the gallery forego cheering, clapping, comments of support, booing, jeering, and disparaging comments. Everyone should feel free and comfortable to make their representations to council. Mr. Taylor, could you please outline the specifics of this proposed bylaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That 22-001 is proposing a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to allow for a carriage home connected to a well and an on-site wastewater disposal field, and to reduce the setback for a carriage house at 91 Brown Road. As with previous site-specific rezoning requests, this property exceeds the best practice minimum lot size of 2.47 hectares or 4.91 acres. To safely have additional septic systems on a property that can be set far enough away from wells both on this property and on adjacent properties. Prior to any building permit, the owners would be required to have their system designed by a registered on-site wastewater practitioner and registered with Interior Health. The rationale for the setback reduction to 9.1 meters from 13.5 meters is to avoid already established non-structural uses on the property, such as access driveways and established gardens and other plantings. This is shown on the applicant's rationale and photographs included in your agenda package. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Taylor, have any written submissions been received since the agenda has been published?
Not since the agenda has been published.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing open. Now, at this time, I ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws. After you have spoken once, I would ask that you wait until all other members of the public have had the opportunity to be heard before speaking a second time. Please stand at the lectern to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this proposed bylaw? For a third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to the proposed bylaw? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Somebody please move that all written and verbal submissions regarding bylaw number 2022-013 to and including July 12, 2022 be received, that the public hearing be closed. Councillor Howe moved, second Councillor Leach. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now return to item 6 of the regular meeting. Somebody please move that the regular council minute meeting be adopted for June 7th, 2022. Councillor Weed, second Councillor Oswald. Any errors or omissions? Done. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have 2 items of business arising from the minutes from the last meeting. Item 7.1 BVP 22-002, 137 and 141 Moran Place, Timber Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. DVP 22-002 is a request to vary the minimum required number of commercial parking spaces, vary the requirement for an oil water separator, and vary the servicing requirements on the subject property. These paving requirements were triggered by an addition built onto an existing structure at 137 Main Street and 137 Moran Place, the retail greenhouse structure built at 141 Moran Place. These changes of use and increase of occupiable floor area mean that the parking requirements of the current zoning bylaw apply. The bylaw requires that off-street parking and commercial loading areas must be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or permeable drivable surface, such as, but not limited to, porous pavers, cobblestones, turf block, and honeycomb grid. General reasons for paving include aesthetics, sound, it is generally quieter than driving across gravel, dust and mud control, general maintenance, weight ratings for emergency vehicles, and snow and ice clearing. General reasons for paving, at the regular council meeting on June 7th, 2022, council referred this item back to staff to ask the applicant to provide an alternative more in line with the intent of the zoning bylaw. They have come back with a proposal to pave the parking stalls, but are still asking for a variance to the paving of the loading area. While staff are still of the opinion that the surfacing requirements of the zoning bylaw are primarily intended to address the summer dust in town, the waiving of paving for the loading zone is far more supportable than the waiving of all of the surfacing requirements. While the staff recommendation hasn't changed, continuing to be based on best practices and existing policy, given council's desire at the June 7th meeting to find some sort of compromise, it is my opinion that they have provided what council has been looking for, given the deferral. I have prepared an alternate resolution should council accept the newly submitted proposal for paving of the public parking area with variances to the oil water separator, the number of parking stalls, and paving of the loading area. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, at this point, it is now appropriate to open the floor to anyone who feel that their interests are affected, starting with the applicant.
Thank you. Would the applicant right to address? Sure, yeah.
Okay, thank you. At the last meeting, the council asked that we revisit our proposal and come up with a landscaping scheme to replace the need for paving. We're an industrial property operating a commercial business that's heavily related to building materials and somewhat small amount of commercial and retail items. We felt that we didn't have the room and it really wasn't appropriate to come up with a landscaping scheme for our business, so we agreed to pave the parking areas. The compromise. The cost of paving has gone up 50% from last year. You can appreciate the cost of oil and gasoline. So that's one issue. It would cost us as much this year to pave just parking spots as it would have a couple of years ago to pave the parking spots and the loading areas. So we've asked for a compromise to pave the parking spots. In fact, that overall, we're actually going to pave a larger area than required for parking, but it suits the property. So the other issue is the timing. Paving in this area seems to be hard to come by. The contractors, I understand there is a contractor coming in around the end of July. In order for us to have any hope of doing it at a reasonable cost, we have to do it in conjunction with them coming in for a bigger job. We have to bring the paver in just for our job. Mobilization costs are quite significant. So we'll be able to share those with a larger job at the end of July or early August. Basically, I think we've given a good compromise. We will pave all the areas required for parking. We'd like to be free of parking in the loading area. Basically, we're a small business. We have $1 million plus payroll and we employ 28 people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Does anybody else wish to speak to this development variance permit? Please.
Yes, my name is Sam Quinlan. I'm a fellow neighbor in the industrial area of North Main Street. It's sort of the negotiation of figuring out where's a happy medium for paving. There seems to be a lot of discussion about landscaping. And for Lillooet Brewing Company, we had gone out of our way to propose landscaping to sort of increase aesthetics, which isn't necessary because it's an industrial area. Nevertheless, we have gone ahead and done that, planting seedlings, planting saplings, planting mature trees during the spring months. And during that time, we've had a lot of loss. A lot of our vegetation has died simply because it's a very difficult place to establish new vegetation. So I just want to say that for the district to require businesses to landscape, I'm concerned that that is not in place in the bylaws, and I'm concerned that that request goes above and beyond. It doesn't take into consideration the inherent challenges of establishing landscaping that can survive. And so that investment, we've noticed, we've lost a lot of money on the plantings that we've put in. It's been a lot of work. It's required a lot of irrigation. So I just want to speak to how council uses that in future applications and just be very cognizant of the realities of establishing new vegetation in the downtown area. And second to that, again, I want to speak more broadly about this particular bylaw. I think it has contributed to hundreds of hours of challenges on both sides. And I really think that this particular bylaw should be looked at in very fine detail when the bylaws get reviewed in the near future. Because I see that, you know, from a higher level, we're tripping over ourselves over the very same issues. And to make development more efficient in a reasonable sense, I think this is something that we should be looking at to revise in the future. And so I'm in support of ways in which we can reduce costs to businesses. And just to mention a little bit earlier, when the district is looking to repave their own roads and the kicking the can down the road simply for economic reasons, I think pot calling the kettle black. I think it's really important that those considerations are honored on the business side as well. So those are some comments I think I'd like to have heard. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Noted, and I can assure you that zoning bylaw 454 will be completely looked at, revised, reviewed, and lots of input from community and businesses before it's done. So I urge you, it's going to be an important part of us moving forward. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the development variance permit?
Well, I was here for something completely different, but in your Councilor Weed, when you were talking to Dave there from Dots from road maintenance earlier, you were talking about the possibility of possibly teaming up on some paving when it comes to town. You'll have to make arrangements far ahead of time, because how that works is they will calculate how much material they need for their highways project, and they'll have that crushed. And from past experience, it doesn't matter how many paving plants are here. If they only have a certain amount of material and it belongs to the ministry, they won't sell it to you. So you'll have to make arrangements so that Dawson Construction knows roughly the volume that you require, so they can crush that material beforehand, or the plant will come and the plant will go and you'll be sad.
Thank you, Mr. St. Dennis. It indirectly would involve this particular permit, but that's valuable information. Okay. You've been noted, taken the task.
I'm noted, and I really just wanted us to work in collaboration with Dawson to have it.
Okay. Let's get back to the development variance permit, folks. Anyone else wish to speak to this variance permit? Council? Councilor Weed.
I really appreciate the fact that you had Rugged Landscaping come in and weed whack down some of the things along the drive there. I think that's a very wise thing to do with this Fire Smart program going on and so on and so forth. Don't know if you were included in that, but I really appreciate that being done, and I hope that continues in the future. Especially with all the lumber on, you know, that you stock there and whatnot, it could be fire hazards. I am really glad to hear that we've come to a compromise with paving parking spots. I also want to note that I'm hoping we can be all inclusive of everyone in the community when we're looking at these variances and development variance permits and the bylaws and whatnot, that we do have to take into account handicap access as well, which I've seen these people on the scooters, and it must be quite the ride on some of this gravelly pitted roads and whatnot. So I'm really thankful that I'm not at that age yet. What else? Anything else? I don't think so, but yeah. Oh, and I was wondering if we do pass it where we're paving parking spots or the parking area. Is there a time limit on that? This is directed to staff. Is there a time limit on that as to when that gets done, and can that be worked through with the wisdom of our fellow residents here? As far as the paving companies coming in and this, that, and the other, is there a time limit that we give, or it's not like we expect it to be paid next Thursday at 11 o'clock?
No, we won't issue a final occupancy, on the buildings that are related to the paving until it's done, but understanding that it is difficult to get contractors out here at this time of year, or at all. We will work with the, owners of the various businesses needing to pay to work with the timeline with them.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor Hoffel?
Okay, so I am glad that this has come back, but again, it's a kind of a, back and forth. I really think that we have to work together to make new business easier to build. And I think we have to define between industrial and commercial properties. And I think if we redefine the zoning options, we create that diversity of choice for new business to build. If they want commercial, then they can go in the commercial section. If they want industrial, and that diversity also is cost effective for both ways, commercial versus industrial. And with Councillor Weep, I think that the handicap access is through the BC code. It's not ours. It's directed through the BC code. So that's something that all business has to have when they're building. But through the mayor, Mr. Taylor, can you define option 3, what that means in its entirety? Because just the difference between paving some parts of it and leaving the loading zone unpaved.
So option 3 was off the original report. This report did not change since the original, so this would have been to approve the entire variance request. If so, it would not be applicable if you wanted to accept what the compromise was.
Right.
And waive the paving for the loading area. I do have one prepped, if that's what you're.
That's what I'm going for.
So it would be that development variance permit, DVP 22-002. For 137 and 141 Moran Place, legally described as Lot 1 and Lot 2, Plan KAP 335997, District Lot 1116, Land District 27 and District Lot 1588, to vary the following provisions of the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454. Vary the minimum required number of commercial parking stalls as prescribed in section 46.3 of 141 Moran Place from 9 stalls for nursery garden supply use to 7 stalls. Vary the requirement to install an oil water separator in the parking and commercial loading areas as prescribed in section 48J and 49H from required to not required, and vary the requirement to service the commercial loading area as prescribed in section 48F from the prescribed material to gravel crush or similar material be approved.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, been moved as was read and written by Mr. Taylor, moved by Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Howe. It's on the table, discussion. Now, Councillor Beach.
I am good with the negotiation and the motion on the table. I just would like to clarify too, though, this is a light industrial area and it's got this commercial mixed use. So there is, when we're talking zoning, there's a gray area, and that's what when Councillor Hoffel is speaking, defining that gray area, what that actually looks like and what it looks like for future development down the road. And I just wanted to also make point of one of the comments at the beginning of this about the vegetation. Landscaping, when we speak to landscaping, it does not just imply vegetation. Landscaping can be hard. There's a variety. I mean, you've got xeriscaping, you've got, there's a whole vast array. So when I say landscaping, and when I implied it in the past meeting, I'm specifically looking for, when we talk about like the dust that's lighted up, what
what is the alternative? So when the brewery came to us, we specifically spoke, or I specifically asked if they were taking the old crush off and cleaning it up and putting new crush down, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I say landscaping plan. I don't mean plant a whole lot of trees that it's not feasible for them to grow. But I do want to know, this council, over the last 4 years, we've been meeting, when we've done our strategic planning and OCP planning, it was specifically discussed the district having not just maybe less paving, but also more tree coverage and shade coverage for health reasons. We've had that, I think it was Councillor Howell that's brought it up. So that's what I'm just to clarify with everybody, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm okay with the negotiation on the table, and the plug.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Councillor Weed.
I'm also okay with the motion on the table, but I would really like to thank Mr. Taylor for his time, his patience, his hard work with both the applicant and the council. I know we've been difficult sending things back and forth, but I just really wanted to get it semi-right. Thank you for your time and patience.
Any more comments, questions from council? Table, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carrie, thank you, staff. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll move to item 7.2, second piece of business arising from the minutes. 108 Main Street, paving requirements.
I'm just gonna give an introduction first.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do it in here. So you can get it from DDP 22-006 is a reapplication of a variance considered in 2021 under file number DDP 21-005. In accordance with the development procedure bylaw, an applicant may not apply for the same request that was denied by council for a period of 6 months. In council's consideration of DDP 21-005, council approved the siting of the structure and the new awning, along with removal of the requirements for the oil water separator, where council also denied the request to vary paving requirement. After council's consideration to reduce the surfacing requirements for neighboring property at 104 Main Street, the applicants have opted to apply again to vary the requirements and to leave the drive aisle as gravel crush. The applicant has also expressed concern that the heavy machinery that utilizes the same access lot as 108 Main may damage any paving works. However, the adjacent lot could supply its own access, or the paving could be designed to anticipate those loads. At the regular council meeting on June 7th, 2022, council referred this item back to staff to ask the applicant to provide an alternative more in line with the intent of the zoning bylaw, specifically to do with landscaping the area as it has been developed in a de facto commercial area with the establishment of a vet, a brewery, and a cannabis store. They have come back with a proposal to create a xeriscape landscape area within their parking area that includes a pedestrian connection between the brewery lot and the cannabis store. I would point out that in lieu of sidewalks, any off-road pedestrian connection provided between property owners is a value to the community. Staff are still of the opinion that surfacing requirements of the zoning bylaw are primarily intended to address dust. While the staff recommendation hasn't changed, continuing to be based on best practice and existing policy, giving council's desire to find some sort of compromise, this is bringing back what council asked for at that meeting. Should council accept the newly submitted proposal for landscaping on site as a way of beautifying Main Street facing frontage, then option number 2 on page 29 of your agenda package has the appropriate resolution. Thank you.
Taylor, would the owner like to come forward and discuss the development variance permit?
Okay, on that, so the picture you had up there, that's you made up. We got consulting from Pemberton Valley Nurseries on the type of plants we want to put in there and whatnot. And I have secured some paving chips for dust control. and whatnot to put down. If that would work instead of paving, like their old paving chips, and I can get it back in the hot weather and whatnot. And that will take care of the dust control in there. I can put them down where we park and into the loading zone also. Carry on the last program we have there. That's about it, other than what we proposed before. That's, the landscaping is in progress, like we have been doing stuff. Taking care of the streets and all there also. And I really think that paving chips are the answer because of the problem we have with the construction that's here, it's in another. All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Mayor.
much.
Would anybody else like to address the development variance permit? DVP 21-006. Yes.
Just to beat a dead horse, this is an industrial area. And the fact that a cannabis store is allowed in an industrial area, I think the beautification process in terms of priority should be considered in that sense. And that in situations where the district is upgrading, taking the lead and planting trees, caring for them, and creating shade, I think this should be a task more broadly applied to the community and the onus not put on businesses strictly to be responsible for the beautification of Lillooet, and take into consideration again that this is the industrial area, and that encouragement to do beautification is always more broadly, I think, appreciated than a heavy-hand approach to that aspect of negotiating dust control as it relates to parking areas, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the development variance permit? On the floor. Okay, Councillor Howe, go ahead.
I'm looking at option 2, and I'd like to move the following motion. That development variance permit DVP 21-006 to vary the requirement to serve, can I just say as written?
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely, yeah. This is,
Okay.
the staff get paid a lot more than we get to read it.
Through the mayor to staff, I would like to move option number 2 as written.
Could you read it out for the benefit of everyone?
Yes, sir. Page 29, bottom.
That's development permits, DDP 22-006 to vary the requirements to surface the parking and loading areas with asphalt, concrete, or permeable drivable surface as prescribed in section 48I and 49F, zoning bylaw 28 September 454, to gravel, crushed, or other similar material for the property located at 108 Main Street, legally described as Lot 5, Plan KBP 18111, District's Lot 1116, Land District 27, be approved.
Okay. So it's moved by, as it was read and written, moved by Councillor Howe and second by Councillor Hoffman. Any further discussion? Councillor Leach?
Through the mayor to staff, does the landscaping plan that has been submitted form part of the motion to be required?
The landscaping plan is that was submitted as a council request will form a schedule in the development variance permits.
That's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Good. Councillor Wee?
Through the mayor, can I ask a question to the applicant? Is that?
Okay, your discretion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, if the applicant wishes to answer it.
I'm sure he will. We're not that difficult. Is there any way or any conversation been had with GNS Contracting about moving their equipment in and out, like from a different place, like a different end or a different side or a different whatever.
Is that
rather than-
required?
Because pardon me,
Is that required?
I'm not saying it's required, I'm asking a question. I'm not trying to be
There has been,
argumentative.
I have talked to Garrett about that, but he'd have to rearrange the whole program there,
Mhm.
and he would. It will be. He could do it, yes, it's not impossible, the expense of it is quite a lot.
Right, I'm just assuming that,
Like-
that is his property, right? Or is that your?
No, that's our property also.
Okay, that answers my question fully then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just, yeah,
He
I wasn't trying
rents
to be
that from us.
argumentative, I was just trying to decipher.
Yeah.
If he leases the property from you, then that's fine.
Yeah, that's what he does.
If it was his property, I would be a little offended that he was impinging on my
Oh,
property.
No, we.
Thank you.
We
Yeah,
own
they
both
are.
those spots.
Thank you, Randy.
I wasn't trying to be that.
Counselor Hoffel, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Cut you off.
So through the mayor, can I ask, Mr. Taylor, is that all industrial? It is all light industrial, right? From the mall back?
Yes,
So-
we don't actually in the current bylaw distinguish between various levels of industrial zone, business industrial, light industrial, heavy industrial. So it is all zoned industrial pretty much past,
The
the
mall.
bylaw of foods.
Right.
To, as I cut the floor. Mr. Mayor, the idea that industrial zones are meant to be sort of not shabby, but not improved, is up to each municipality. There are options in the local government acts, under the development permits, to have an industrial development permit zone, to have an industrial development permit within the OCP to specifically address, the aesthetic of industrial zones. So it is an option. We do currently have a gateway, industrial development permit on the way from the highway, before the bridge. There isn't currently one in this area. So while we can't enforce any of these aesthetic, considerations, as part of the development variance permit, when someone is asking for a reduction in something, council is well within its rights to ask for something else as comments.
Perfect, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I'll now call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. We'll move on to item 9. Any counselor wants to remove the piece of correspondence of the four listed. Counselor Lee.
What do you do?
Item 3 will be 18.3. Need someone to move that the correspondence included in this information reported July 8, 2022. You received for information barring number 1 and number 3. Move. Counselor Weave, second Counselor Howe. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Move to item 11.1. Request for budget and asset retirement obligation.
That's a good question about correspondence. I don't know if all of council gets these emails that used to come from Dane Gare at the rec center with correspondence on them. I was trying to find it on my phone, but I can't. Pardon me?
Reading list.
Probably, and it hasn't been updated since February, but we still keep getting it. Can that be thrown out or put somewhere? Or-
Absolutely, that's been on that list of things.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Basson.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Move to item 11.1, request for budget for asset retirement obligations.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Hi.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you, through the mayor. Some of you may recall me mentioning in the past the upcoming PS 3280, which is asset retirement obligations, usually with an absolutely stressed and terrified look on my face. This new standard is being implemented by the Public Sector Accounting Board, PSAB, and it requires that all public sector entities, such as the District of Lillooet, include in our financial statements a record of the future liability that will be legally required to incur upon the retirement of any of our tangible capital assets. As this is a standard that is required by PSAB, we have no choice but to accept it and figure out how to deal with it, how to report on it. We did publish an RFP for the project, which is not going to be a small undertaking, but unfortunately we didn't receive any responses to that RFP. A while after posting and closing that RFP, I received a call from John of JW Infrastructure Planning, who was well aware of this upcoming requirement and was already starting to work with some other municipalities on their ARO planning and assessments, and was wondering if the District of Lillooet was interested in working with him on our project. Of course, I was like, yay. So I spoke with him at length on what he could offer the district and requested a quote and a work plan, which you find attached to my report in the agenda tonight. Also included in the report is a summary of his experience and a listing of all the municipalities that he's working with, both on this project and has worked with on projects in the past. So I don't want to confuse everybody with all of the technical requirements of the standard. I would only say that should we not hire an external consultant, I'm very uncertain we have the manpower and the expertise to even begin with scoping for the project. Very briefly, just for clarity, ARO requires that we record a liability on our financial statements for the future legal costs of retiring our assets. So in a context that everybody can probably understand, take the district office building, for example. We know the building has asbestos. If sometime in the future we decide to demolish or completely remodel the building, we're required to remediate for asbestos abatement. What this ARO standard means is that we have to figure out right now how much this is going to cost sometime in the future, and then figure out, working backwards, how much that actually means in today's dollars. And that's what we record as a liability in our financial statements. So say we figure it's going to cost in 20 years down the road, we're going to demolish the building. It's probably going to cost about $1 million. Discounting that to current costs, taking into account return on investment and a whole bunch of other factors, we figure out that today's price is $600,000. If we put that $600,000 in the bank today, it'd be worth $1 million in 20 years, and that's what we need. So today we record $600,000 as a liability. I did not do any calculations on that, just to be clear. I was just pulling numbers out of the hat just to give you an example. So that's not at all confusing. Everybody can totally do that, right? So keep in mind, we have to have a legal obligation to remediate. So again, just a very simple example. I'm not taking any legality into consideration. Take a vehicle, for example, one of our public works trucks. If we decide in the future to get rid of it, there's no legal obligation to remediate anything. We can, and again, just loosely, we can take it to the dump and just get rid of it. No future obligation, no ARO liability that we have to report. So those are just a couple of examples. They're definitely not exhaustive. There's a lot of legal obligations that may exist that we don't necessarily even know about. That's why we need an external consultant for this. And that's why Staff is recommending that council approve a budget of $15,000 for the implementation of this project and approve the awarding of the project to JW Infrastructure Planning to develop screening criteria, do the initial screening, work with staff to seek input, and finally to confirm and quantify the district's AROs. As mentioned in the staff report, there may be future costs that we don't even know about yet. However, those would be brought forward to council as either part of budget discussions in the future or as requests such as this when and if they come up. So with that, I will pass it back to the mayor. Thank you. I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have, but if they're technical, I might have to get back to you.
Thank you. Before I open it up to Doug, is this a somewhat new regulation or requirement?
Through the mayor, yes, it is new. I can't tell you exactly when it passed through PSAB, but we are required to start reporting for it'll be our 2023 financial statements. So this year and part of next year, we have to complete all of the scoping and figuring out the financials for it. And then we have to report it at the end of 2023.
Thank you. And that's a liability that we incur then, that is a burden to our community and taxpayers?
Correct. It's recorded as a liability in our financial statements with, just to very loosely, with the idea that we're being transparent and very clear that we do have a future obligation to do something. So we need to start planning financially for that obligation.
The councilors, I really think council, this is something you should pick up on and carry forward at the UBs. No, I'm serious about this. I mean, if you consider our building and the asbestos removal, okay? That building was built with the approval of the province. So where's the liability going to go? We have to be very careful of this, I'm telling you. And I really think Mr. Taylor and Mr. Denegar can help sort it out. When you go to UBCM, we've got to take them up on this. Otherwise, figure out a way we can drag that building up and put it in the dump.
I love that.
I know. Any comments from Councilor Hall? No, this is serious. There's bored people in Victoria that really need this back in the back.
That's your next career. Okay. Okay, so through the mayor, thank you, Joni. I'll lead with, I will support staff recommendation, but just for clarification, how does this differ from the asset management plan? Does the asset management plan just tell us what needs to be done and not the cost of it? Or do they kind of coincide a little bit?
Yes, but more no. Asset management is more that we know all of the assets that we have. We know what their life expectancy is. We know when we're going to have to replace them, and we start planning for that future. This is it's more, I have to agree a bit with the mayor. It's more that they're just pushing more regulations down on us. But at the same time, we do need to prepare for knowing in the future that we're going to have this cost that's going to be incurred, and we need to be planning for that well in advance, because some of these costs are going to be very significant. So, sorry, there's not, I don't have a real answer for that. Yes, they will work together a bit, but they're two completely separate standards.
Is it something that we should have the asset management plan done first and then this, or is there a particular preference? Would one make the other easier?
through the mayor, yes. And should the asset management plan be done beforehand? Absolutely, that would be the ultimate, that would be the best. But unfortunately, we don't have a choice in the timing of this. If we don't report this on our financial statements when they require it, we will not get a qualified audit opinion and our financial statements will not pass.
So I think that's something important to take to UBCM, that we all had 5 years to do an asset management plan, and therefore this should follow it, instead of having a date that we have to come up with that's prior to that 5-year asset management plan. But anyways, thank you, Joni.
And then again, Councillor Weed.
Yes, through the mayor, I'm very much in favor of taking it to UBCM. I have no idea which ministry we would talk to about this, but personally, more and more stuff is getting pushed from the federal government to the provincial government, from the provincial government to the municipality. And yet the funding isn't given to us to prepare for these things. So I have no problem with passing the recommendation for the funding, but I really think we need to look into discussing this with the ministry of some sorts. You know, I feel like government in general, like having a husband that, do I ask permission or do I beg for forgiveness later? And that's kind of the situation we're in right now with them. It's very, yeah.
Councillor Leach.
So a couple of things. First, I agree with what's being said here, and on the Silva board right now, because it's a multi-municipality issue, it's not just to us. We are actually looking at the resolution that Silva as a board want to take to the minister, so I will definitely bring that forward. I'm sure the support from all municipalities or the other members will be there. We'll do that as soon as they get home. On the other side of things, because I like to be devil's advocate, having something like this in play like 20, 25 years ago, I think would have helped us with situations like the rec center and the situation that we're in. So although having it handed to regulations handed down to us right now is super pain. And the fact that we have to pay for it out of our own pocket, I'm not super thrilled with. However, I understand why it's there. But yes, I agree.
Any further comment? My last one is that the building is half used by the province, so they have at least half the liability. And the other one, and I'm serious about it, if there's a way over the next 5 years that we could see getting our own new district office, then we can gift it to the court and to the conservation and to the Indigenous court. And it's their problem. No, seriously, think about it. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, the CFO just has raised her hand to make her point.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry, just
Earl.
before it goes to council for a vote, I just want to be clear that this resolution, should council not accept the resolution, does not mean we don't still have this obligation. It means that all of this work plan will be put on staff. I fully support council taking it to Silga and UBCM and see if there's anything that can be done. But to be clear, this resolution is not saying we're going to do it or we're not, just that we can have some help with it.
We understand that, Ms. Rue. Sorry, we're just venting a little bit here. Relaxing through the evening. Any further comment? Okay, I'll read. Would somebody move that the 2022 budget be amended to include 15,000 for the development of asset retirement obligations, and that the cost of the project be funded through the district's accumulated surplus, and further that the district's chief financial officer be authorized to enter into agreement with JW Infrastructure Planning for this project. Councillor Hopeful, second. Councillor Howe. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you, folks. Move to item 11.2, council resolution number 178/2019, spring ordinance.
I bring before you this request for decision on this. So this was, as you read in the notes, stats, 2019, so it was before it wasn't my task, but it was handed to me. Graciously taken it.
It's called delegation.
Yeah, it was bounced around these stuff. So yeah, so in short of this, and the reason why I'm asking for a rescind on this would be that there has been a considerable change in the situation. The delegate that brought it forward was citing it was a noise and nuisance bylaw issue. Well, since 2020, August 6th, April 6th, they came to us and CN and said that there's a reduction of service. So as you see, there is about, I don't know, you can count on one hand.
When the community hears, when the community hears the horn, we're all gonna jump for joy and I'm running down.
Yes. Economy. But being that I did do research on it, and like I said, it's been so difficult dealing with CN. No one's returning calls, they don't return emails, and they keep bouncing around. I did contact the city of Kamloops and discuss their process in that, and they too have voiced frustration as well. They ended up hiring a consultant, got associates to go through the whole process with them, and went through that 8-step process. And went through that. So they ended up having to hire a consultant, which we would more than likely have to do as well, to be talking on our behalves and looking at those things. And when it all came said and done, there would probably be realignment issues that we may need to have to do and to making these crossings safe and to the new regulations that are put forth. So all in all, we don't have exact numbers because we're only at the number 1 stage and can't get beyond that, making that contact with them. We're looking at Kamloops numbers and their association or their consultant has come back with anywhere from $300,000, which is just the equipment being in place, to over $1 million because of the realignment, purchase of land, all those things, because it becomes our issue. There is monies available that they will subsidize in that, but we're looking probably at that overall cost to do that now. Is that worth the municipal's time and money spent on these things moving forward when the service has been reduced to such a minimal service that I don't know. So I'm asking we'll go forward with the request, but please take under consideration what the circumstances have changed.
So thank you, Mr. Roy. Any comments, questions from the council?
I have 2 comments. One, I can't believe that this ever came to council. That you moved to the town where there's train tracks, but then complain about there being train and a horn. And number 2, like not realizing that this is a safety issue and the expense to do it any other way, like putting up arms or whatever. So I'm fully in support of kiboshing this thing.
Councilor Lee.
Well, I'm pretty sure this council knows where I stand on this issue. However, after bringing the correspondence back in 18.2, you guys might want to rescind that again. So I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. Get in the mood.
It's pretty light in here, isn't it?
I think we're getting one right. At least there's nobody in the audience who's saying, move to another town. Okay.
Yeah.
Further discussion? No. I need someone to move that the council resolution 178/2019 be rescinded, which stated that staff prepare a report to council outlining the options for amending nuisance bylaw 2006 number 273 to remove the exemption for train horns as well as the costs associated. Councillor Weed, second Councillor Howe. Any further discussion? None. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move to 11.3 Downton Park Revitalization Project Budget Review.
Earlier speak to this. You, Mr. Darling, we can see you.
you want me to talk?
Nope.
Well, Jeremy said he was going to open, so I was waiting for his introduction. Anyway, Mr. Mayor and Council, it's nice to see you all again. This Downton Park revitalization project a budget was approved for the some improvements in the park, and the staff went through the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, and they were successful in getting a maximum grant of $92,248. The challenge of this project are the skyrocketing costs due to labor shortages, supply issues, and construction material increases that everybody is experiencing. Staff has met on several occasions to discuss the project and how best to proceed. And given the uncertainty of the construction market, the discussion included in the discussion were the Chief Administrative Officer, the CFO, the Director of Corporate and Development Services, the intern, myself, the Manager of Public Works and Utilities, and the building official. And it was decided that the best thing to do would be to review the cost estimate and provide council with 3 options for consideration. We also asked for the assistance of local construction community to assist in the cost estimates. They were supportive. They tried to make the time. I had several emails back and forth with them, but they're just swamped and they weren't able to provide any information to us. So the costs are done strictly as estimated by staff, and they include a contingency of 20%. So the first option is the original funding option, and it includes the replacement of the current washroom, the installation of a flagpole, the installation of 5 poles to support the festoon wiring and lighting. Some people call it festival lighting, and an installation of a water bottle filling station. The washroom is a 25-foot by 10-foot prefabricated structure. It'll have 3 separate entrances, 1 for women with 3 stalls, 1 for men with 2 stalls, and 1 gender neutral for handicapped access. The interior finish will be gyprock vinyl lined, so it's subject to vandalism. I'm not sure how much vandalism takes place there. The washroom, the problem with this washroom is it's really just a mobile home placed on concrete pads and a block wall foundation. And it should be noted, we were somewhat surprised that the variation in cost wasn't more significant than it is, but underneath the existing washroom, there's quite a lower level of the elevation of the gravels. So to build this washroom in the same location, you'd have to build those gravels up. So you have to pay for structural fill, and you have to have testing services and those sorts of costs in addition. So that brought the cost up. It's estimated the cost of option 1 is $187,176 net GST. The benefit is it's the least expensive, but the detriment is that you couldn't use it in the winter. It'd be very costly to try to upgrade it so that you could have winter use. Option 2 includes all the work in option 1, but adds a concrete footing and foundation, plus the ability for future upgrade to a heated 3-foot crawl space. So it would be ready to be winterized if you wanted it to be. It also adds an upgrade to interior walls using fiberglass reinforced panels, which is something that was recommended by the building official to reduce vandalism. This option is $192,516 net GST. The benefit is there is the option to upgrade it at a later date, but the detriment is that the cost to upgrade it at a later date is just going to be more than doing the whole thing now. The option 3 is a winter use compliant, which is basically the full meal deal. It includes everything in option 1 and option 2. It provides insulation and heating to the crawl space, and so that you could have future public events in the winter. The washroom would not be required to be usable all winter, so you could turn it down or reduce the heat so that things don't freeze, and then just crank it up when you want to use it. The estimated cost for option 3 is $197,316. And the benefit is that it gives immediate access to the washroom on a year-round basis without any requirements for costly upgrades. Staff is recommending that option 3 is the most viable. And option 3 would provide the district with the immediate ability to schedule year-round events to address the interests of local interests, First Nations neighbors, and the LGBTQ2 and other stakeholder communities in Lillooet and the surrounding region. In discussions with local contractors, we talked about tendering the project, which is normally done. But in a project such as this, where you're doing it piecemeal, you got the flagpole come in and it has to be done, and then you got the lighting to be done, and you got the washroom, and you got to remove the one washroom and then come in and put the foundation in and get ready for the other washroom. It was felt that it would be better to go into a cost plus kind of a contract where the contractor is not taking any risk and the district doesn't take risk. He just supplies us with his invoices and he gets a preset amount on top of that. And if we go to tender, he's going to have to guess what the costs are going to be in the future, and he's going to have to put his markup on that. So I think in this climate, it's the best to have. Based on the revised budget of $197,500, it is recommended option 3, winter use compliant, and the community revitalization funds portion, which is $92,248. The remaining portion of the project would be $105,252. In discussion with the chief financial officer, she said that the gas tax revenues can be used and that they for this type of purpose, and that the balance currently in that fund with the amount already projected for 2022 is $1,531,861. And so staff is recommending option 3.
Thank you, Mr. Carling. Any comments, questions from council? Councillor Paul.
Okay, as you're quite aware, lighting up Down Park and using it as like a gateway to the downtown core has been my council wish list since the beginning. And I just want to thank Mr. Deniger because I think he had a lot to do with getting this grant and I really appreciate it. And having said that, I noticed that Mr. Darling used that word of maximum Canada Community Revitalization Fund. But I'm just wondering if there's any correspondence that we could do to find out if there was anything left over and because I mean, all these funding applications and grant applications that went in were based on a lower amount because, you know, inflation hadn't quite got to where it is today. So I'm just wondering, is there any chance that we could just contact them and ask them if there's any money left over to kind of offset some of the costs? Is that ever done?
Just speaking, we did that with the airport. We had the first phase of the airport where we applied for funding. And then the second phase, I'm not sure why it was cut into 2 phases, but we realized that the second phase should have probably been done with the first phase. We asked for additional funding to fund the second phase so it could all be done at the same time. And all it really did was delay the project by a year. They basically said, well, all the funding is, you know, allocated. But that doesn't mean we can't write a letter and ask them if we can have additional funds. Whether they'll give them to you or not, I'm not sure. It just depends what the allocation is. If all the money's given out, you know, I don't know that they'll come up with any additional funding, so.
I was deeply involved in the contentious discussions with the grants, the program provider, went right down to the 11th hour to get our approval for negotiations with them. They were massively oversubscribed. And the only reason we got this is because we pulled up all the stops. It literally got the very last thing that they needed hours before it closed. It would cut us off. We wouldn't have got anything like had occurred to many other applicants.
Right.
So they were using the timing of the grant to slice out that oversubscription. So we snuck under the wire by pulling it.
Okay, well, again, I just want to thank you because I know you did a lot of work on that. So I just thought I'd throw out the question and see, but yeah.
We could ask,
Thank you
but
so
from my
much.
understanding, they were massively oversubscribed. So they had then a lot of applicants
Right.
cancel the projects.
Okay, any other questions, comments from council? Okay, hearing none.
Oh, sorry, I have one more.
Okay, Councillor Howell.
Squeak that in. Through the mayor. I have a question in regards to option 1, and it states, the installation of the flagpole and the installation of 5 poles to support the festoon wiring and lighting. And I'm just curious, the installation of the 5 poles to support the festoon wiring and lighting, but not the festoon lighting. I think I might have missed some conversations around who's providing the festoon lighting, and is it by the person who's gonna be using the festoon lighting in the park, or is that something that the district's gonna supply? Is it included in this budget?
It's part of the project.
It's
just-
part of the
just
project,
overhead, like the
It's
nice
lighting, it's
you have
lighting.
in your backyard or your garden.
Yeah,
But it's permanent.
You want to
Okay,
get, want to get it taken out?
No, not at all. I was just curious.
If
I
I-
just wanted to make sure I understood fully.
We'll not ask the event organizers to put.
Oh, got his hand up, Don.
Yeah, if I can just clarify the washroom, the lighting, the poles, the flagpole, they're all included in the budget. But the washroom, the district is purchasing, the flagpole, the district is purchasing, the poles for the lighting and the lighting that we're purchasing. So it's just hiring a contractor to put everything together. But all those big ticket items, it's being purchased through the district.
Okay, someone moved that the revised budget of 197,500 for the Downton Park Revitalization Project Option 3 winter use compliant be approved, and that the district's portion of the construction cost estimated to be 105,252 be funded out of the district's gas tax reserves, and that the district's financial plan be amended, and further that the chief administrative officer be authorized to sole source the project to a local contractor on a cost plus basis. Councillor Hopeful, second. Councillor Weed. Further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're going to have a 10-minute recess.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm a director. I'm using.
That's what you're going to say.